Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group. You've tuned in to Hot Topic Bold Talk, the podcast where we dive into everything that matters today. Join me as we explore the hottest trends and pressing issues with conversations that sizzle and perspectives that heat up. This is Hot Topic Bold Talk, since every chat has something cooking. Let's dive in to today's discussion. Hello, my name is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group. This is Hot Topic Bold Talk, podcast 68, from apathy to action, mobilizing the disengaged voter. I think that's an important thing for all of us to consider because we have a lot of people that don't pay any attention to politics. I'm going to say this about myself as an introduction to this podcast. I read every day multiple resources to be able to write the scripts for the Hot Topic Bold Talk podcast. I keep asking myself, how can I give my listeners as many facts as possible so that they will be prepared for what is coming on in the political scene? Therefore, I offer multiple comments from various resources. I'm doing my best to educate you so you'll be well prepared to deal with the disinterested people you know are friends who flat refuse to learn what is happening with Trump and Biden, so they can make a thoughtful decision about who they vote for in November. So appreciate something. Anybody that's disinterested, you know a lot more than they do. So I'm going to start this podcast by letting you know what the disinterested voter is doing, since they're the ones that can either support our democracy or destroy it. The rest of us need to go vote too and consider our vote very important. What are the disengaged voters doing? In the week, magazine, January 21st, 2024, in the news section on page 17, we have a different set of writers contributing to an article, Disengaged Voters, Key to the Election. These are their comments. Donald Trump, felony's conviction prompted only about a 2 to 3% switch against him in the polls, said Hayes Brown in MSNBC.com. But the shift comes largely from the exact demographics that President Biden needs to reach before November. A New York Times set of polls released last week determined that the shift from Trump to Biden since April in battleground states was young, non-white, and disengaged Democratic-leaning voters. Among Trump to Biden switchers, the largest share said they sometimes or never pay attention to the news. A recent Pew poll found more than 40% of the voters said they seldom followed the election, and Times pollsters determined that nearly all Trump's polling gains this year have been around people who did not vote in 2020. A criminal conviction could be the event that breaks through to these critical fence setters. Another writer says, "Don't count on it," said Douglas E. Scrum and Carly Cooperman in The Hill. A single point's 3-point shift is well within the margin of error. Meanwhile, in one post-verdict Harris X poll, 30% of the voters said they're now more likely to support Trump, compared with 27% saying they are less likely. On the actually matters to voters, the economy and immigration, most voters will have more confidence in Trump than Biden. What are the polls telling us? Said Ed Kilgore in New York Magazine, is that Biden needs disengaged, unhappy voters to stay home. I don't think we can count on that, so I think we're going to have to search them out and get them educated. Among those who did not vote in 2020 and 2022, Trump is leading by a whopping 20% points. Rather than try to persuade irritated young and non-white voters that the economy has improved dramatically under Biden and that Trump presents a threat to democracy, Democrats should hope for a low turnout election. Interesting fact, though, among engaged voters, Biden is leading. Another individual writer says, a sane majority is starting to emerge, says A.B. Stoddard in the Bulwark. Polls show a consistent majority of voters believe Trump has committed crimes and his attacks on the U.S. justice system do not resonate with the normal person who flies their flag right side up. Trump has been spewing even more deranged lies since the verdict, and his MAGA followers recently booed the police officers who protected the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. This kind of brazen extremism is likely to turn off independent voters. Fortunately for Biden, these swing voters are the very group whom Republicans are increasingly acting like they don't need. Here's another piece of information that presents other facts about people who are avoiding making a choice for the President of the United States. In the article, Floating Above the Fray, by Tom Nichols from the Atlantic Daily, Thursday, June 13th, 2024, at 5:09 p.m., begins with a story about the 1984 epic Once Upon a Time in America, gangsters in early 20th century New York. The term Jimmy Clean Hands was given to Jimmy O'Donnell, a rising and idealistic union organizer who was corrupt, yet distanced himself from the thugs in the movie. Nichols uses this story as he says the following. The Republican Party now has an entire subculture of Jimmy Clean Hands types who claim to recognize that Trump is completely unfit for office and have said that they will not vote for him, yet will not vote to stop him. Some Republicans have gone the full distance back to Trump, criticizing him, but also now pledging to vote for him. Bill Barr comes to mind, as does Nikki Haley. Barr is a true believer, and Haley is a shallow opportunist. But both are pillars of courage next to Republicans such as Paul Ryan, Chris Christie, and John Bolton, the supposed guardians of the guardrails who've made the case against Trump, but have also vowed not to vote for either Trump or Joe Biden. Bolton has said that he will write in Dick Cheney. Even former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, a more moderate Republican now running for a Senate seat, has said that he will write in a symbolic vote that states, "My dissatisfaction with where the party is." To his credit, Ryan went on Fox News. Now, of course, he sits on the board of Fox Corporation, to make his case, an environment in which it takes nerve to criticize Trump, much less offer people a permission structure to abandon him. Fear could be an influence among the clean hands folks as well. Some Republican members of Congress reportedly told Liz Cheney that they would have voted to impeach Trump, but they literally feared for their safety. Senator Mitt Romney voted in 2021 to convict Trump. He told my colleague, McKay Copens, that after January 6th, he spent $5,000 a day on security for himself and his family because of the violent threat. Members of Congress might use the excuse that their career is at stake, but Ryan isn't running for anything, and neither are most of the others. Mike Pence has been coy about whom he will choose, other than to say he won't endorse Trump. But Pence should realize that he is finished in politics and has nothing to lose beyond the social ostracization that might come from Trump supporting friends. By taking a strong stand against the president, who didn't seem to care if a mob strung him up in front of the Capitol. Arguments from one side, insiders such as Pence and former National Security Advisor Bolton, are especially tinny because they were in the room and know how dangerous Trump really is. Bolton even said to the MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle that a second term Trump era would be a disaster, especially because it would staff people who, as Bolton admitted, would be vetted to ensure they never tried to emulate Pence's last-minute defense of the Constitution over Trump. Nichols goes on to talk about the protest votes. However, he says, if you genuinely think that Trump and Biden are exact political isms, the same of each other, however, he goes to say that they are not the same at all, since we have many examples given every day of the dangerous and destructive things Trump says while President Joe Biden leads our nation based on the rule of law and the democratic values and principles that have been so much a part of our country. He goes on to say, in the end, the clean hands position encourages people to think that their vote really does not matter other than as a personal dissatisfaction. And that's not true. It does matter. Most of these Trump opponents, of course, will be happy no matter what happens in 2024. If Trump wins, they can push their clean hands image, noting that no matter how much they hated Trump, they didn't betray the party. If Trump loses, they can say that they warned their fellow Republicans. Either way, they can float above the fray. Nichols ends by saying it will be their fault if Trump wins. He finishes his article saying, personally, I vote as if my vote is a deciding ballot. I know it isn't, of course, but it focuses my mind it focuses my mind and makes me take the civic duty of voting seriously. People have given their lives for my right to stand in that booth. And when American democracy is facing a clear and existential threat, their sacrifices deserve something more than the selfish calculations of the Clean Hands Caucus. So I think he's really saying we need to pay attention to the fact that our vote really does matter. Facts about the lies and hollowness of Trump's populism and hidden agendas of MAGA Republicans. I think we all need to watch that. What they do is they throw out a lot of things, but what they're doing is trying to cover the real thing they're trying to do. Even Forbes has gotten to putting in lies that Trump says and what the facts are. In their Forbes Daily on Monday, June 17th, 2024, at 7:11 a.m., they say, Forbes was first to report on the New Jersey's review of liquor license at Donald Trump's 3 golf courses in the state. And the next day, spokespeople for the former president claimed that he had nothing to do with the license at the 3 clubs. But Trump is the sole owner of the 3 clubs that are under review, and the names of the businesses listed on the liquor license are all owned by a revocable trust, of which Trump is the sole beneficiary. Let's look at something else that's happened. In the Week article, Payback, Will Trump seek revenge for his conviction? This is a reiteration of his previous threats. And one of the writers from the National Review seems to have no understanding that past presidents do not have the right to threaten people, since he is being held responsible for his criminal actions. So here's what the article says. There will be political persecutions if Trump wins in November, said Jamel Bouie in the New York Times. Project 2025, a second-term blueprint drawn up by MAGA allies, details plans to weaponize the Justice Department against Democrats and Blue America generally. But retribution is merely this week's pretext. Republicans' ultimate goal is to roll back the political and cultural settlements of the past half century and return power to, quote, the people that are specifically a specific group, a narrow, exclusive people defined in racial, religious, and ideological terms that embody who Donald J. Trump is. The Atlantic Daily on Thursday, June 20th at 6 p.m. in the flimsiness of the Trumponomics by Charles Sykes describes the following. Economists are warning that Trump's reported idea to eliminate the income tax and replace it with massive tariffs on imports would cripple the economy, explode the cost of living, and likely set off a trade war. And because the math doesn't come close to working, it would also tremendously increase the national debt. In other words, Trump's latest notion is both economically and physically illiterate. The politics of Trump's latest schemes are perhaps even worse because this plan exposes the hypocrisy of his faux populism. Instead, what's striking about the idea is just how regressive and non-populist it is. Replacing the income tax with tariffs would result in massive tax cuts for the ultra-rich at the expense of the middle and lower class Americans. And then in the week, June 12th, the 2024, in the article, A Handgun No, but a Nuke Yes, by Matt Lewis from the Daily Beast conveys these ideas. And I want you to hear them because they're very important. As a convicted felon, Donald Trump will soon lose his license to carry a concealed handgun in New York, said Matt Lewis. Yet the same man who's considered too dangerous to own a pistol is one election victory away from being put in charge of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. It's a stark reminder of how absurd our country has become in the Trump era. In many states, convicted felons are not eligible to vote, yet millions of Americans will cast their presidential vote for a convicted felon. He's eligible to run because American founders never imagined that someone like Trump would get within 10 miles of the presidency. Trump has been charged with stealing a huge trove of classified documents and intelligence secrets. But if he wins the election, he will soon again be given carte blanche authority to view or declassify any document he sees fit. Admired by followers as a great businessman, Trump has been fined $350 million. $350 million. And is barred from doing business in New York for 3 years, which for vastly inflating the value of his properties to banks and insurers. And he says, I go on, suffice it to say that Trump's lawless behavior has cost him nearly everything except his political mojo. So here's how I'd like to conclude it. With all these facts, about 40% of the citizens of the U.S. do not read or pay attention to politics. Don't you think it's time for you and me to take the idea of how Tom Nichols considers his vote when he said, "Personally, I vote as if my vote is the deciding ballot." I know it isn't, of course, but it focuses my mind and makes me take the civic duty of voting seriously. People have given their lives for my right to stand in that booth. And when American democracy is facing a clear and essential danger, their sacrifice deserves something more than a selfish disregard for the significance how each of our votes matters. So I think it's time that we talk to everyone we can to see what they are thinking about who they will vote for in November. My podcasts have given you plenty of information to wake up the disinterested voter, or the one that doesn't like to listen to news, since it causes them to feel fear. We need to ask them to wake up to the reality of a serious danger Trump poses to our country, and read and listen to the many things you have to offer them to let them see the reality that President Joe Biden is the choice for their vote in November. Thank you for listening. There you have it. Another episode of Hot Topic Bold Talk is in the books. We journeyed through today's discussion, uncovering diverse perspectives and shedding light on a very critical matter. A massive thanks to all of you that are my listeners. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're a part of this adventure. Feel free to drop your views in the polls and the Q&A section. It's really important for me to hear from you and know how you feel or what you think about my podcast. Gear up for more intriguing discussions in our next episode. Until then, stay connected, stay engaged, and let's keep those conversations buzzing. Thank you.